Hello and welcome to Cultural Wealth Wednesdays. I'm thrilled you joined us today for what I believe will be a transformative conversation about recognizing, honoring, and leveraging the incredible assets that exist within our diverse communities. I'm Dr. Crystal L. Clemons, founder and CEO of Our Village Consulting, and I've dedicated over 15 years of my career to a simple but powerful belief. Every student, every family, and every community possesses incredible wealth that, when recognized and cultivated, can transform educational outcomes. As someone who has spent my career in school counseling and counselor education, I've witnessed firsthand how traditional deficit-based thinking can limit our vision of what's possible. But I've also seen the magic that happens when we shift our perspective to recognize the cultural wealth that surrounds us every day. Cultural Wealth Wednesdays is our weekly space to explore, celebrate, and learn how to leverage the diverse forms of capital that exist in our communities, what researcher Terry Yasso calls community cultural wealth. We're talking about the aspirational capital that drives families to dream big for their children, the linguistic capital found in multilingual households, the familial capital that creates strong support networks, the social capital built through community connections, the navigational capital that helps families persist through challenges, and the resistant capital that emerges from communities advocating for change. Each Wednesday, we'll dive deep into practical strategies for identifying cultural wealth in your school or community, building authentic partnerships that honor diverse perspectives, creating programming that builds on existing community assets, challenging systems that perpetuate deficit thinking, and developing your own cultural competence as an educator or leader. Cultural Wealth Wednesdays isn't just about changing how we think. It's about changing how we act. It's about building the kind of inclusive, asset-based educational communities where every child can thrive. So let's begin this journey together. Let's challenge ourselves to see wealth where others might see deficits. Let's build bridges where others might see barriers. Let's create the villages our children deserve. Welcome back to Cultural Wealth Wednesdays. Today we are going to explore something powerful. Neurodivergent students from minoritized communities don't just need our support. They're actively changing systems, advocating for justice, and teaching us what inclusive education should look like. This episode is about resistance capital, navigational capital, and why educational leaders need to listen to these students as experts on what needs to change. Again, as we know, we've been following this series since October. We know that resistance capital is knowledge and skills developed through opposition to inequity and inequality. Neurodivergent students of color develop sophisticated resistance capital because they face compounded exclusion, ableism, and racism. Both of these occur in educational systems. These students understand intimately how schools fail them. They know which accommodations help versus the ones that are performative. They recognize when inclusion is just physical proximity without actual belonging. They can articulate exactly how discipline policies target both neurodivergent behaviors and racialized perceptions. Traditional deficit thinking sees this awareness as students being difficult or oppositional. Think oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. See, cultural wealth approaches recognize that as expertise. When a Black autistic student points out that she's being punished for stimming, while a white autistic student with the same behavior is getting accommodations, that's not attitude. That's a sophisticated analysis of intersectional discrimination that should inform policy change. When a Latinx student with ADHD explains that detention doesn't help his executive function challenges, it actually makes them worse, that's not making excuses. That's expert testimony about how ineffective interventions actually hinder students, and these schools should heed that expertise. See, this resistant capital represents institutional intelligence that educational leaders desperately need. The question is whether we're humble enough to learn from students we're supposed to be teaching. Let's look at how neurodivergent students of color are already leading change, often without adult permission or support. Let's look at the autistic Middle Eastern student who started an anonymous Instagram account documenting microaggressions and ableist incidents at school. She's using social media literacy and cultural communication skills to create accountability where formal systems failed. Consider the group of ADHD students, mostly Black and Latinx, who formed an underground study group because they realized the school's one-size-fits-all academic support didn't work for them. They developed peer tutoring strategies that leverage their neurodivergent strengths: movement breaks, collaborative learning, verbal processing. See, that is social capital, building resistance capital. Think about the dyslexic Vietnamese student who surveyed other students with learning disabilities about what actually helps them learn, then presented findings to the school board demanding curriculum changes. He's using navigational capital, understanding how the school boards operate, combined with resistance capital to advocate for systemic change. Or the nonverbal autistic Puerto Rican student who uses assistive technology to write powerful essays about intersectional ableism and racism in special education, which her English teacher helps her to submit to education journals. She's building linguistic capital through technology while exercising resistance capital through public advocacy. These students are not waiting for the adults to fix the systems. They're organizing, they are documenting, they're advocating, and they are demanding change. Neurodivergent students of color develop exceptional navigational capital. They learn early which teachers actually understand neurodivergence and which ones just tolerate it. They figure out which accommodations are worth requesting and which ones mark you as difficult. They understand timing, when to self-advocate and when to have the parents intervene. One student explained that she learned to frame her needs in ways that don't trigger teacher defensiveness. Instead of, "This assignment is designed badly for ADHD students," she says instead, "Could I have an alternative format?" That's sophisticated navigation of both ableism and power dynamics. Another student described memorizing key phrases from his IEP because he knows teachers won't remember his accommodations unless he advocates for himself. He's 9 years old and already understands that his legal rights mean nothing without constant self-advocacy. That's navigational capital born from institutional failure. This navigation expertise should inform how schools design systems. These students are institutional researchers conducting real-time ethnography of educational dysfunction. Smart leaders would pay consultants thousands of dollars for the insights these students offer freely if we listen. So how do educational leaders actually center neurodivergent students of color as experts? Well, first, you create formal advisory structures where these students inform policy, not just share feelings. Don't just ask, "How do you feel about our inclusion practices?" Ask, "What specific changes to policy, practice, and procedure would make our school actually inclusive?" Pay a consultant to help you choose adequate and capable student consultants. When you ask students to share expertise developed through painful experiences of exclusion, you compensate them. Create a stipended position for student advisors and budget for it. Implement youth participatory action research, where neurodivergent students of color lead investigations into school practices that affect them. Give them access to data, authority to make recommendations, and a commitment that you'll actually implement their findings. Create peer support and advocacy programs led by neurodivergent students of color. They often provide more effective support to each other than adult-led programs because they understand intersectional experience. Fund these programs, provide stipends for peer leaders, and recognize this work as legitimate expertise. Also, protect the student advocates from retaliation. When students critique the system, they risk being labeled behavior problems. Make it explicitly safe for students to exercise resistance capital without punishment. Create whistleblower protections for students who document inequity. Amplifying student expertise means creating platforms while protecting agency. Don't tokenize neurodivergent students of color by having them perform their trauma for adult audiences. Instead, you support them in sharing their expertise on their terms. This might look like funding students to present at education conferences where they speak directly to other educators about what needs to change. It might mean supporting student-authored publications where they write about their experiences and recommendations for educational improvement. Help students publish in education journals, blogs, and policy briefs where their expertise reaches decision makers. And if you need assistance with that, I'm pretty sure your local university will gladly assist in the development and the revision, if necessary, the research and the publication to educational journals. Also remember that not all students want to be advocates. Some neurodivergent students of color just want to learn without having to educate everyone. The emotional labor is real and is really not up to the students to provide the education that the adults should be keen to get on their own. Don't pressure students to perform resistance capital for institutional benefit. Instead, you create the opportunities for those who want to lead the change while protecting those who just want the support. So here's your Cultural Wealth Wednesday challenge. Identify 5 neurodivergent students of color in your school or district who demonstrate leadership, advocacy, or sophisticated analysis of systems. Invite them to a conversation where you listen, really truly listen to their expertise about what needs to change. Then commit to implementing at least one student recommendation within 90 days. Report back to students about what you did with their expertise. Show that their resistance capital and navigational capital actually influenced institutional decisions. We need to remember that these students deserve educational systems that recognize their full humanity and honor their cultural wealth. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell for Cultural Wealth Wednesdays. And in the comments, I want you to share one thing you've learned from neurodivergent students of color about what schools need to change. Let's build a community of leaders who recognize students as the experts on their own experiences and needs.